Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you what it is in Joseph Part 4. Now, last time, remember, we left off, Joseph had taken Shimeon, hearing, and he had bound him, and he sent the brothers back to bring the youngest brother, Benjamin, to him. Why? Because Joseph knows what these guys did to him, and he's just sure that they probably did something as rotten and evil to his younger brother Benjamin, and he just wants to make sure Benjamin is okay. Okay, so he's sending for Benjamin. And now the brothers had to go back and tell Dad, listen, he wants us to bring Benjamin, and Jacob is not excited about this. He's already lost one boy, and now he's lost two boys because he's lost Shimeon, right? And you want me to send Benjamin? Remember, Benjamin and Joseph were the two sons of Rachel, Jacob's favorite wife. Okay, so he's not keen on sending Benjamin. But there's a famine, and they're starving, and that's the only solution to get food. So he finally says, all right, you know what? If it has to be, it has to be. If I'm bereaved of my children, I'm bereaved, I think is what he said. So, and then he tells them, you know, take a little almonds, take some pistachios, take some honey, and send it down to him. He's trying to, you know, get on the good side of this Egyptian leader, who happens to be his son Joseph. Okay, he doesn't know that. So they send. He agrees to have Joseph go down there. Okay, Jacob agrees to send Benjamin down to Joseph. And we're in Genesis 43, starting in verse 16. I think he says, when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to his house steward, bring the men into the house and slay an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon. So the man did as Joseph said and brought the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, it is because of the money that was returned in our sacks the first time that we are being brought in, that he may seek occasion against us and fall upon us and take us for slaves with our donkeys. Remember, whenever they went back the first time, Joseph had their money put in the sacks, and so they're thinking, oh, he's bringing them to his house to pounce on them for them stealing their money back, which they didn't do. Okay, it's interesting. It says that Joseph said to his house steward. Remember, Joseph is a type of Yeshua. Okay, and remember, the entire book is written about Yeshua, Jesus. Okay, so it shouldn't surprise us that there's these parallels in there with Joseph. And Joseph has this house steward. Okay, he's the servant. I think that this house steward could be in some way a type of the Holy Spirit. All right, because he's the servant, right? And he's the one who's going to inform the brothers of things, of what's happening. So verse 19, so they came near to Joseph's house steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house. In verses 20 to 22, the brothers tell the steward their whole tale. I'm not going to read through it all. Verse 23, the house steward said, be at ease, don't be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given your treasure in your sacks. I had your money. Then he brought Shimeon out to them. Then the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet and gave their donkeys fodder. Verse 25, so they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon. Before I read that, notice how do the brothers learn about this coming of Joseph? From the house steward, from the servant. See, that's kind of a Holy Spirit type, right? How do we learn about Yeshua? The Holy Spirit comes to us and tells us. Okay? So that might be a parallel there. So they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that they were to eat a meal there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present which was in their hand and bowed to the ground before him. He then asked about their welfare and said, "Is your old father well, of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" And they said, "Your servant our father is well. He is still alive." And they bowed down in homage. Notice the brothers are bowing down to Joseph. We saw that way back in part 1 when Joseph had the dreams of the sheaves in the field bowing down to Joseph's sheave. And then he had the sun, moon, and the stars, and 11 stars were bowing down to Joseph's star, or bowing down to Joseph. Okay, so all those dreams that he had back in part 1, chapter 37, they are now being fulfilled. The brothers are indeed bowing down to him. Genesis 43:29. And as he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, he said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me?" And they said, "May God be gracious to you, my son." And when Joseph said this, Joseph hurried out, for he was deeply stirred over his brother, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and he controlled himself and said, "Serve the meal." Verse 32, so they served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with them by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is loathsome to the Egyptians. Now they were, listen to this one, verse 33. Now they were seated before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in astonishment. How cool is this? He has them come to lunch. He has place cards sit around the table. And as they're sitting there, they notice we're sitting in order of our birth. The oldest, next, all the way around to the youngest one. Now, how many of them are there? 11 of them, right? What are the chances that Joseph would just, this Egyptian, who is Joseph, would just accidentally or happenstance put them in their birth order? This is a prophetic picture also. You know, today, Jews don't know what tribe they are from. I take that back. There's one tribe that does know, the Levites, okay, the priests. If you're a Levite, you would have a name today like the name Cohen. Cohen is the Hebrew word for priest. So if your last name is Cohen, you're from the tribe of Levi. If your last name is Katz, that's a tribe of Levi. If your name is Aaronson, you're Aaron's son, right? Aaron was the first high priest. Does this make sense? Levi, you're the priestly tribe. But none of the other Jews know what tribe they are from, okay? That's how it works. But in the book of Revelation, chapter 7, starting in verse 4, it talks about this, and it said, I heard, this is John talking, and I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000, sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. In the book of Revelation, they're going to pick 144,000 Jewish male virgins, and they're going to be sealed. Some mark put on their head. Because they will have become believers then, okay? And it says in verse 5 that from the tribe of Yehuda, there'll be 12,000 sealed. From the tribe of Reuben, there'll be 12,000. From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. And he goes through and lists all 12 tribes in Revelation here, and there'll be 12,000 from each. That's what makes up the 144,000. So at some point in the future, they're going to know what tribe they are from, right? Because there are going to be 12,000 from this one, 12,000 from that one, and only God would know what tribe that somebody was from. So that revelation is going to be made in the book of Revelation, Hit Galut, apocalypsis, right? So it's kind of the same picture. Jesus knows what tribe they're from, and Joseph knows the 12 brothers well enough to seat them in the right order. Okay? You see that picture? It's there, whether you see it or not. Okay. Genesis 43:32. Well, we've already talked about it. We're in verse 34. And Joseph took portions to them from his own table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they feasted and drank freely with him. Notice Joseph gives Benjamin 5 times as much as the others. Remember, 5. The 5th letter of the Hebrew alphabet was Hey. What is Hey? Hey is a revelation, a blessing, something big is coming, okay? We just know 5, Hey, grace, okay? And it's interesting that all the brothers are given a portion. Benjamin's given 5 portions. It's the grace is being poured out on Benjamin, the favorite, okay? What else do we have to say about that? We see it in 1 Samuel 17 when David goes after Goliath. Remember, he reaches down, he took a stick in his hand, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his bag, and with a sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. David only used and needed 1 stone to take out Goliath. But notice he picked up 5. A revelation, a big blessing, something is going to be revealed, something big is coming. Okay? So anytime you see 5, we covered this back, I think, in the Noah talk, that there are 5 verses in the Bible where the 5th mention of the person's name finds favor. The 5th mention of Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Okay? In the book of Ruth, what does she say? Please let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after one in whose sight I may find favor. And Naomi said to her, Go, my daughter. Saul sent to Jesse, saying, Let David now stand before me, for he has found favor in my sight. That's the 5th mention of David's name in the Bible. And Esther found favor in the eyes of all who saw her. 5th mention of Esther. And God granted Daniel favor. That's the 5th mention of Daniel in Daniel 1:9. And here's another big example of 5 meaning blessing, grace. The Torah. The Torah has 5 books in it. Right? Thank you. All right? You can't get better grace than that, right? Okay. Genesis 44, verse 1. Then he commanded his house stewards, saying, Fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. Again, right? They're doing it. This has already happened once before. Then in verse 2, Joseph says, And put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his money for the grain. And the servant did as Joseph had told him. And as soon as it was light, the men were sent away, they with their donkeys. And they had gone just out of the city, and were not far off, when Joseph said to his house steward, Up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, Why have you repaid evil for good? Is this not the one from which my Lord drinks, and which he indeed uses for divination? You have done wrong in doing this. Okay, there's this cup that he has buried in one of their sacks, and he's going to accuse them of stealing it. Okay, and it's kind of funny. He says, "Don't you know that this is the cup that my Lord uses for divination?" Well, does he use divination? Is he fortune telling with this magic cup? Absolutely not. Joseph is not. Joseph says he can't even interpret dreams. The dreams are only interpreted by God. Okay? So he's kind of toying with them on this. And it's funny that this whole idea of a cup Okay, because who ends up getting the cup is Benjamin. That's where they're going to find the cup, in Benjamin's bag. Okay, and we have a picture here in the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, where Jesus, this is the night before his crucifixion. He's had the Last Supper. He goes over to the Garden of Gethsemane. He's praying. He's praying so much that he sweats blood. Can you imagine being so intense that you sweat blood? Whew. And Jesus, as he's praying, he says, Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. Jesus is asking God if there's any way possible to remove this cup from me. Jesus is innocent, right? He's innocent. He's about to go through crucifixion. Benjamin is innocent, and he ends up with this cup that he doesn't want to have in his bag. Jesus does not want to drink out of this cup, right, of crucifixion. I think it's interesting, you know, people say, well, I have this problem, I don't know how to solve it. And people say, well, we'll pray about it. Oh, God, he can't answer that one. That's, you know, it's just impossible for God to answer this. No, if Jesus himself, Yeshua, he came to earth to die for us. That's the purpose of him coming. Yet, even Jesus prayed the night before his crucifixion, God, if there's any other way, but no matter, let this cup be removed from me, but either way, not what I will, but what you will. If Jesus is asking God for the impossible, because that's the impossible, right? And it behooves us to do the same. Do not hesitate to ask God to remove whatever cup of injustice or problem you have. Okay. Genesis 44, verse 6. In verses 6 through 8, I'm not going to read them all, but the brothers proclaim they're innocent. You know, how could we steal silver and gold from your Lord's house? Verse 9. And then they say, with whomever of your servants it is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves. So he said, now let it also be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, and the rest of you shall be innocent. So the brothers are so sure that they are not guilty of taking this cup. They're just saying, hey, whoever the cup is found with, let him die, and the rest of us will be slaves. Little do they know that the cup is in Benjamin's bag here. Okay? But then the house steward says, no. Well, kind of no, kind of yes. We'll do according to your words. With whoever it is found, they will be my slave, and the rest of you shall be innocent. And the servant searched, and beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Remember Benjamin, Ben Yamin. Ben is son, Yamin is right hand. So Benjamin, the son of my right hand. Then they tore their clothes, and when each man loaded his donkey, they returned to the city. Okay, this is unbelievable. With whomever of your servants it is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves. That's what their suggestion is. And no, the servant says, let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slave. The rest will be innocent. That's nice. You know what that's a picture of? That's a picture in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, in John 11, verses 49 and 50. And this is verse 49. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, said to them, you all know nothing at all, nor do you take into account that it is expedient for you that one man die for the people, and that the whole nation not perish. You see the parallel? We're not going to punish all 11 brothers for this missing cup. only the one in whose bag it is found. Okay? The same thing here in the New Testament. You know, it would be expedient for one person to die instead of all the Jews in Israel. Okay? If we can throw all the blame onto Yeshua, Jesus, that would solve our problem. Okay? So he searched, verse 12, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and when each man loaded his donkey, they returned to the city. Oh my goodness! You make this deal, right? That only one will be punished. The rest of you can go free, and it's found in Benjamin. And you know, remember, they begged Jacob, "Please let us take Benjamin. We have to take Benjamin so we can go down there and get Shimeon back and get food." Reuben came up with that harebrained idea. You know what, Dad? If I don't bring him back, you can kill 2 of my sons. Ridiculous. Okay. And Judah, his plan, Judah was better. Judah said, listen, I will be surety for him. I will take responsibility. That was nice, okay. Judah's kind of coming around. Judah, remember, he's the one who said, what does it profit us to kill him? Let's sell him. Judah's the one who, when Tamar was found pregnant, you know, let's have her burned. So Judah is kind of, he's coming around here, you know. It did say here also, when they discovered this, that they tore their clothes, and when each man loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. I want to go back to the New Testament. Go back? No, I want to go forward to the New Testament in Matthew 26, verse 62, and talk about this trial with Jesus, because there's some really cool, poignant points here that kind of tie in. In verse 62, as the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Do you not answer? What is it these men are testifying against you?" Notice, he's asking Jesus, okay, so what are you accused of? You know, it doesn't work that way. In our court system today, they can't get you to testify against you, right? You have to, if you want to accuse me of something, you bring in 2 witnesses. And I need 2 witnesses. And they don't have to be people. They could be a fingerprint and some DNA, or a video, or a smoking gun, or you understand? But you need 2 witnesses. It's not drag me into the court and say, all right, what are you guilty of? And we're going to, no, it doesn't work that way. It all comes from this right here. Okay? Verse 63 in Matthew 26. But Jesus kept silent. Notice, he didn't testify against himself. And the high priest said to him, I adjure you by the living God that you tell us whether you are the Christ, the Son of God. Wow. We've talked about this in an earlier video. This is Leviticus 5:1. Leviticus 5:1 says, if you know who did the crime, and someone comes to you and puts you under oath and say, do you know who did this, or do you know the answer to this crime? If you know and you don't tell, then you are guilty of the crime. Right? That's what Caiaphas is pulling on Jesus here. Okay? He can't get Jesus to fess up to anything. Well, there's nothing to fess up to, right? Jesus is perfect. So he can't get Jesus to, he can't find anything. And Caiaphas, as much as he wants rid of Jesus, he can't just sentence him to death. Well, first of all, he has no authority to sentence him to death. The Romans are in charge here, right? But he can't get him on anything because nobody can make an accusation that will stick. So the high priest pulls out Leviticus 5:1. I adjure you, if you know the answer to this question, you must answer it. Are you the Christ, the Son of God? So Jesus has to answer. If Jesus says, No. Jesus just lied. And he's no longer perfect. He cannot be our perfect korban, our perfect sacrifice. If Jesus says yes, then, well, you'll see what happens, because Jesus is going to tell the truth here. Yeshua said to him, "You have said it yourself. Nevertheless, I tell you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his robes and said, "He has blasphemed. What further need do we have of witnesses? Behold, you have now heard the blasphemy." Okay, this is going to get good here. We're still going to talk about the Caiaphas Jesus thing here. Okay, Jesus tells the truth. Remember, I told you, if Jesus says no, he's a liar and the case is finished. If Jesus says yes, blasphemy. He's claiming to be the Son of God. He's claiming to be divine, right? Blasphemy. His sentence is death. And Caiaphas screams out and tears his own garment. And, okay, if you go back to Leviticus 21, you can go all through Leviticus and find these rules, but in Leviticus 21, 1 through 10, it gives a bunch of rules that are specific to the high priest. I'm going to just read a couple of them here. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say to them, no one shall defile himself for a dead person among his people." Let's see, in verse 5 it says, high priest, "They shall not make any baldness on their head, nor shave the edges of their beards, nor make any cuts in their flesh." Verse 7 says, "They shall not take a woman who is profane by harlotry, nor shall they take a woman divorced from her husband." Okay, so a priest can't marry, a high priest can't marry a divorced woman. Verse 9, it says, "The daughter of any priest, if she profanes herself by harlotry, she profanes her father, and she shall be burned with fire." Remember this one? This is the one Judah is trying to have Tamar burned for getting pregnant. Doesn't apply to Tamar because she's not the daughter of a priest. Verse 10, "The priest who is highest among his brothers, on whose head the anointing oil has been poured, and who has been consecrated to wear the garments, shall not uncover his head nor tear his clothes." So here's just a whole bunch of rules, and there's a bunch more that the high priest can't do. And if you look at that, verse 10, Leviticus 21:10, "The priest who is highest among his brothers, on whose head the anointing oil has been poured, who has been consecrated to wear the garments, shall not uncover his head nor tear his clothes." Nor tear his clothes. The high priest cannot tear his clothes. By the way, notice the word in there, in that word clothes, is bagad. Okay? We talked about that. Bagad is garment, right? This whole, how many deceptions by garment do we see in this story? Okay? But notice he can't tear his clothes. If you go back in Exodus, we're doing this is a rabbit trail of a rabbit trail. Exodus 28, it says, "These are the garments which they shall make for the high priest: a breastplate, and an ephod, and a robe, and a tunic of checkered work, a turban, and a sash. They shall make holy garments for Aaron and his brother, that he may minister as priest to me." Okay, so the priests had to wear certain garments. Verse 31 of Exodus 28, it says, "You shall make a robe of the ephod all of blue. There will be an opening at its top in the middle of it. Around its opening there shall be binding of woven work like the opening of a coat of mail, so that it will not be torn." Okay, the high priest has a specific garment that he's wearing that's got this double ring around the neck, so that it specifically cannot be torn, which is good because Leviticus 21 says the high priest may not tear his garment. But what happened whenever Caiaphas, picture this, Jesus said, "Yes, it's as you say, and soon I'll be returning," okay, riding on the clouds. Caiaphas yells blasphemy. Caiaphas takes his garment and tears it. Right there. Caiaphas is no longer high priest. He's purposely and premeditatively tore his own garment. Now there's an opening in the high priesthood. The minute Caiaphas tore that garment. Well, guess what? Jesus is he will fill that position. Remember, Jesus came to be our sacrifice. He came to be our high priest. He came to be everything for us. Our husband. Okay? And you see a picture of this when he's being crucified, John 19, verses 23 and 24. Remember that the soldiers, when they had crucified Jesus, took his outer garments and made 4 parts, a part to every soldier, and also his tunic. Now the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece. So they said to one another, "Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it, to decide whose it shall be." This was to fulfill the scripture, "They divided my outer garments among them, and for my clothing they did cast lots." Okay? He's quoting here Psalm 22. Psalm 22 is, my goodness, you read this, my God, why have you forsaken me?" This is a psalm that David does, but it's just pointing to the Messiah. Okay? It starts out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The same words Jesus yells on the cross. And throughout this Psalm 22, it talks about that he was pierced, that none of his bones get broken. In verse 18 of Psalm 22, it says, "They divide my clothes among them, and they cast lots for my garment." This is what's happening with Jesus there on the cross. Okay? So the moment Caiaphas tears his garment, Caiaphas is not the high priest. Jesus is on the cross, and they're separating his garments here. You take this one, you take that one. Oh, look at this. This is one seamless piece. Let's not tear it. If we tear it, it ruins it. By Caiaphas tearing his, he's no longer the high priest. By Jesus not having his torn, it's showing that he is our new high priest. Is that beautiful? My goodness. And notice, back in Leviticus 21:10, where it actually gives the rule about you can't uncover your head or tear his garments. If you take the beginning of that verse, the priest who is the highest among his brothers, the priest who is highest among his brothers, take that sentence and mark off every third letter, starting with the first hey. It spells out Hain, Dam, Yeshua. Behold the blood of Yeshua. God has woven that in every third letter. I think that's kind of cool. I love it when he does stuff like that, don't you? Okay, and in Hebrews 4:14, it goes on and it reinforces. "Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Yeshua, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession." We see it again in Hebrews 6:19 and 20. "This hope we have as an anchor of our soul, a hope both secure and steadfast, and one which enters within the veil, where Yeshua has entered as a forerunner for us, having become a high priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." Remember in the Old Testament, whenever they sinned, the priest would have to kill the animal. One was the scapegoat and sent out. One of them, he'd take the blood of the sacrificial animal and go behind the veil. Only the high priest could do that and pour the blood on the Ark of the Covenant. Okay? Well, Jesus, he entered within that veil. Okay? In fact, when Jesus was crucified, it said that the veil was rent. The veil was torn. Okay, signifying that now we no longer need an earthly high priest to go and make atonement for us. Now the veil is torn. It's no longer. We have direct access to God, each of us. We don't need to make confessions to some priest in a confessional. We can go directly straight to God with Jesus as being our high priest. Very nice, isn't it? We don't no longer need to sacrifice an animal. We have the sacrificial blood of Yeshua Jesus. Okay, what was our topic today? Joseph. Let's go back there. Genesis 44, verse 14 and 15. Okay, when Judah, and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him. And Joseph said to them, "What is this deed you have done? Do you know that such a man as I can indeed practice divination?" Now that's interesting, because as I told you earlier, Joseph doesn't practice divination, right? So why is he telling them that? Well, remember, Joseph is a picture, a type of Yeshua, who's going to come later. And would you believe in Matthew 12:24, later the Pharisees and the religious leaders of Jesus' time, they are going to accuse Jesus of not practicing divination, but maybe, doing things, satanic. Matthew 12:24. But when the Pharisees heard this, they said, "This man casts out demons only by Beelzebub, the ruler of demons." So later the Jews are going to accuse Jesus, not the Jews, the Pharisees, who are Jews, but specific ones. They're going to accuse Jesus of dealing with satanic-y things, okay? And there's kind of a foretaste of this when Joseph says to them, "Don't you know such a man as I can practice divination?" Verse 16, so Yehuda said, "What can we say to my Lord? What can we speak, and how can we justify ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's slaves, both we and the one in whose possession the cup has been found." They're taking responsibility. We're all your slave. And Joseph said, "Far be it from me to do this. The man in whose possession the cup has been found, he shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father." Yeah, right. There's no way they're going to go up in peace to their father if he keeps Benjamin. That would kill their father. So they got to come up with something here quick. Verse 30. "Now, therefore, when I come to your servant, my father, and the lad is not with us," this is Judah imploring, begging Joseph, okay? "When I come to your servant, my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, when he sees that the lad is not with us, he will die. Thus your servants will bring the gray hair of your servant, our father, down to Sheol in sorrow. For your servant has become," he's talking about himself, Judah, "for your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then let me bear the blame before my father forever. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the lad, a slave to my lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go to my father if the lad is not with me, for fear that I see the evil that would overtake my father?" Do you see what what Judah is doing here? Judah is saying, listen, there is no way I can go back there. My dad will die. Our father, your servant, our father, will die if I don't return with Benjamin. I gave him my word, so please take me. Let the boy go back with the brothers. Let me take the place of him. Wow, Judah's coming around here, isn't he? He's willing to give his own life for his brother. Reminds me of John 15:13. What does it say? Greater love has no one than this, that one lay down his life for his friends. That's what Judah's doing here. Very nice. Offering his own for, it's a picture of that a substitute can fill in for somebody else. Well, that's the whole Jesus picture, isn't it? Genesis 45:1. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried, "Have everyone go out from me," so that there was no man with him, when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. Okay, Joseph's about to spill the beans of who he really is, but what does he do first? Have everyone go out from me, so that there was no man with him. It's only going to be the brothers and Joseph when he reveals himself. That's a hugely prophetic picture. It's actually, how is it going to happen at the end? Jesus, Yeshua, is going to come back. When? Because he's going to come back to Jerusalem, and the Jews are going to say to him, how did you get those holes in your hand? And Jesus says, I got them in the house of my brothers, right? And my friends. But the picture that he has everyone go out from him before that happens, that might be a picture of the rapture, okay? Jesus is not going to go back to Jerusalem and announce himself and reveal himself to the Jews until everyone is sent out from them, okay? Picture of the rapture. It's there, I see it. Let's see, 45, 1 through 3, verse 2. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, Please come closer to me. And they came closer, and he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be grieved or angry with yourself, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. There's a couple things here. One, he says, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now, we talked about that back in part 1. I don't think that the brothers did sell him. They wanted to sell him, and we talked about that the Midianites pulled him out and sold him to Ishmaelites, okay? But Joseph doesn't know that. Joseph is just a guy in a pit. All he knows is he gets pulled out and sold. He didn't know who actually, in his mind, his brothers did the selling. But he wasn't out of the pit watching the transaction. He's just assuming that they're the ones who did it. So just because it says here, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt, that does not prove that they sold him into Egypt. It just proves that Joseph thinks that they sold him into Egypt. Make sense? That's an important point. Okay? And that God sent him before to preserve life. All of this was part of the big plan. He knew that the famine was coming. He knew all this, and he had Joseph go to Egypt and being sold and the whole thing to preserve life. Very nice. A very complicated path, but it was all orchestrated and prophesied and set up by God. How neat is that? Okay, 45, 9 through 11. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all of Egypt. Come down to me. Do not delay. You shall live in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, and your flocks and your herds and all that you have. There I will also provide for you, for there are still 5 years of famine to come, and you and your household and all that you have would be impoverished. Verse 12, Behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that this is my mouth which is speaking to you. Now you must tell my father of all the splendor in Egypt, and all that you have seen, and you must hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept on them. And Afterward, his brothers talked with him. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts and go to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now you are ordered, do this, take the wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Do not concern yourself with your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Remember, Egypt represents the world, right? You have the promised land, and then you have the world. A lot of times in the Bible, when it talks about the land is Israel. When it talks about the seas, those are the nations. When it talks about Israel, that's God's promised land. When it talks about Egypt, Egypt is a kind of a symbol of the world. Okay? Verse 21. Then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each of them he gave changes of garments. But to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. There's that 5 again, blessings pouring out onto Benjamin. Okay, we see it in Matthew 9:16. Here's a couple more examples. Do you not understand or remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000? How many baskets full you picked up? Right? Jesus feeds 5,000 with 5 loaves. Okay? We were given 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. All right? We have 5 fingers right there. 5. Okay? What can we do with this? It's wonderful, right? So 5 blessings. Verse 23. To his father he sent as follows: 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and sustenance for his father on the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and as they departed he said to them, do not quarrel on the journey. I think it's funny that they put that verse in there, because he knows these brothers. He has to warn them, don't be quarreling on the way. Verse 25. Then they came up from Egypt, and they came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. And they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and indeed he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. But Jacob was stunned, for he did not believe them. When they told him all the words of Joseph that he had spoken to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Then Israel said, it is enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. Isn't that neat? You get some, you ever just get depressed? And you don't want to go, and you get some really good news like this, right? And you are just revived. You just, okay, it just, woe is me, and then Dutch Uncle puts out a new video, and you are revived. Yeah, right. Okay, 46 verse 1. So Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. I think that's beautiful. First of all, Beersheba, Beer, remember, means well. Sheba is 7. This is the well of 7. But the first thing that Jacob Israel does is, instead of just, let's get in the wagons and go to Egypt, he goes and offers sacrifices. Is that what we do when we get the good news? Is the first thing we do, thank you, God, thank you. That is a beautiful picture there. Way to go. Point Jacob, point Israel. Verse 2. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. And he said, I am the God of your father, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will close your eyes. So his son Joseph will be there when he dies, right? That's the closing of the eyes. By the way, in verse 2, when he says, Jacob, Jacob, and he says, here am I. There are 7 times in the Bible that somebody's name is repeated. There are 4 in the Old Testament. Abraham, Abraham. Abraham says, here am I. Jacob, Jacob, here am I. Moses, Moses, here am I. Samuel, Samuel, speak, for your servant is listening. And in the New Testament, there are 3, Martha, Martha, Simon, Simon, and Saul, Saul. Notice the 3 in the New Testament are not as, the responses aren't as gung-ho as in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, here am I. I mean, they're ready to answer. They're ready to go do whatever God's calling, you know. In the New Testament, you were Martha, you were worried and bothered by so many things. Simon, why do you give Satan permission to sift you like wheat? Saul, why are you persecuting me? A little bit different here on the... But the point is that there are 7 being that completion, perfection number, right? Okay, Genesis 46, verse 5. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob and the little ones and their wives in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. And they took their livestock and their property, which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and came to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him, his sons and his grandsons with him, and his daughters and his granddaughters and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2, and all the persons of the house of Jacob who came to Egypt were 70. So Jacob shows up with 70. 70. That's a huge number, right? Biblically. 46:28. Now he sent Yehudah before him to Joseph, Jacob did, to the point out the way before him to Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen. Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as he appeared before him, he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a long time. Then Israel said to Joseph, now let me die, since I have seen your face, that you are still alive. There's more falling on the neck. Remember they did that when he saw Benjamin. He fell on Benjamin's neck, and Benjamin fell on his neck, and now he's falling on Jacob's neck. A lot of neck falling going on. Genesis 47, we're not going to read it all, but this is where Pharaoh meets Jacob. That's verses 1 to 12. Verses 13 through 26, they retell the whole story of the famine. Okay, and 47:27, it says, now Israel lived in the land of Egypt in Goshen, and they acquired property in it and were fruitful and became very numerous. Verse 28, Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time for Israel to die drew near, he called his son Joseph and said to him, please, if I have found favor in your sight, place now your hand under my thigh and deal with me in kindness and faithfulness. Please do not bury me in Egypt. But when I lie down with my fathers, you shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place. And Joseph said, I will do as you have said. And he said, swear to me. So he swore to him. Then Israel bowed in worship at the head of the bed. Genesis 48. Verse 1, now it came about after these things that Joseph was told, behold, your father is sick. So he took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, with him. When it was told to Jacob, behold, your son Joseph has come to you, Israel collected his strength and sat up in the bed. Then Jacob said to Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. And he said to me, Behold, I will make you fruitful and numerous, and I will make you a company of peoples, and will give this land to your descendants after you for an everlasting possession. Now your 2 sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. But your offspring after, the offspring that you have been born after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the names of their brothers and their inheritance. Here's what Israel's just done. He's about to die. He sits up in bed, he calls Joseph in and says, listen, these 2 boys of yours, Ephraim and Manasseh, they are my sons. They are equal to Reuben and Simeon and all the others. You understand? He has adopted them 100% fully they are the sons of Jacob. They are the sons of Israel. Joseph's 2 boys. That's interesting. And you're going to see why in a second here. Okay? You know, back at the beginning of this talk, we showed you the 12 tribes of Israel. Here they are. Okay? Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. That's the order that they were born. Here's their gematria values. Here's how you spell their names in Hebrew. Got it? Okay? And there was all kind of clever things. When you added up their names, they added up to 3182, which happened to be Elohim's value, 86 times 37. Remember the 37s just show up everywhere. Okay? We also had different combinations. These 4 were 1147, and these 4, and these 4. Remember, which happens to be L, 31 times 37, right? We had these 4 adding up to 888. You had all this beautiful gematria working out, and which is 24 times 37 here with Yeshua, Jesus. His name is 888 in the Greek, okay? That's what we had at the beginning of the story. These are the original 12 sons of Jacob. But now, at the end of this story, you're going to have Joseph. Joseph's going to die soon, okay? Well, Jacob's definitely going to be dying soon. But at the end of Genesis, Joseph dies, okay? And when you get to Exodus and you read on in the rest of the Torah, you don't have those original 12 sons anymore. Now you have a different set of 12 sons. The new set, and I have them here juxtaposed against each other, from Exodus on, you've got Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Manasseh, and Ephraim. Notice in the new list, who's missing? Well, Joseph's missing. Why? Well, because Joseph died at the end of Genesis. And you know who else is missing? Levi, right? Well, why are those 2 boys missing? Notice there's still 12 tribes. There's still 12 sons listed. It's just a different 12. Okay? And let me explain what's going to happen here. In the rest of the Torah, Levi is going to become the Levites, right? And they will not be listed in the inheritance of Israel, of Jacob, okay? They will not get one of the portions, okay? In fact, it talks about that the priests, the Levites, their inheritance is the Lord. They are going to be the priests, the priestly tribe, okay? And I mean, you can't get a better inheritance than Yahweh. Yahweh is your inheritance, Levites. The other boys, they are all going to get a chunk of land in the promised land, okay? So what about Manasseh and Ephraim? How do they work in? Well, remember, Joseph, he is a son of Jacob. He should get a piece of land, okay? But Joseph, he's going to get 2 pieces of land. Remember the firstborn son, Becher, Beit Kaf Resh, 222, it adds up. 2, 2, 2. The firstborn gets a double portion, right? Well, Reuben is the firstborn, correct? But the problem was, Reuben, he was a wild kid. If you go to the end of Genesis 49, okay, verses 2 and 4, this is when Jacob is giving blessings to all the sons. And he says, "Gather together and hear, O sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Uncontrolled as water. You shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it, and he went up to my couch." So although Reuben was the firstborn to Leah, Jacob's first wife, Reuben did some bad things. He went and slept with his father's concubine, so he loses the benefit of being firstborn. Joseph is also a firstborn. Joseph is the firstborn to Rachel, the one that Jacob really loved. So when Reuben gets kicked out of the firstborn category and the benefits for it, Joseph moves in as the firstborn of the second wife. So Joseph is going to get this double portion. Make sense? Okay. And so whenever you have the list of 12 tribes from Exodus on, you're going to have the original brothers minus Levi, because he gets the God as Yahweh as his inheritance. And when you get to Joseph, Joseph's dead. Joseph died at the end of Genesis. So Joseph's 2 boys, remember, Joseph's going to get a double portion. 1 portion goes to Ephraim, 1 portion goes to Manasseh. So you still end up with 12 tribes. And remember, Jacob, he adopted these 2 boys. He said, "These 2 are mine," just like Reuben and Simeon. Okay? So whenever you see how they divided up the land, there'll be a portion for Ephraim, there'll be a portion for Manasseh. Does that make sense? Of course it does. Okay. If I take those 12 tribes, and we'll list them here just like we did at the beginning of Genesis, but this is the new list. Okay, Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Dan. See, Levi is out, and Joseph is out, and we've put Manasseh and Ephraim in. And we put in all their gematria values, and there's their spellings of their names. Okay. Now, remember, all the earlier ones, they all had divisible by 37, divisible by 37. Now the 12 tribes, if you add them up with Manasseh and Ephraim, they add up to 3,700 exactly. Hold on, we got a phone call here. Hello? Sorry, we were interrupted by a phone call, but we're back. Okay, my friend from Israel called. How cool is that? Okay, so we're talking about the 12 sons, the 12 new sons, right? Levi becomes the priest. Joseph is dead. Manasseh and Ephraim are taking his place, right? And if you add up the 12 new 12 from Exodus on, all right, those 12 boys add up to 3,700. That is so cool. Yes? And I've gone and I put the 12 in this, there's a what, 3 across, 4 up and down, 12 boxes. And I've even put them in order. You got, starting up in the upper right is Reuben, and work your way across. Simeon is next, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, and at the bottom, Benjamin. And then you have Manasseh and Ephraim. They're in order in their ages here. You see it? Okay. Now, what's kind of cool about this, not kind of cool, what's absolutely very cool in this is if you look at the two in the upper left, Judah and Gad, Judah's name adds up to 30 in the Gematria. And Gad, it's a Gimel and a Dalet, 3 and 4 is 7. Judah and Gad, just those two tribes alone add up to 37. That's neat. Remember, all 12 are going to add up to 3,700, but those two up in the corner, left corner, add up to 37. And look at Reuben. Reuben's name adds up to 259 by itself, the red. And 259 is 7 times 37. Again, very cool. Check out Simeon and Naphtali. They border each other here. Simeon's 466, Naphtali's 570. They add up to 1036, which is 28 times 37. Issachar and Zebulun add up to 925 together. That's 25 times 37. The three across the bottom, Benjamin, Manasseh, and Ephraim, add up to 888, the same value as Jesus in Greek, but that's 24 times 37. And Dan and Asher add up to 555, which is 15 times 37. Not only do they all add up to 3,700, but different groupings of them are also divisible by 37. Just unbelievable complexity in this that God has woven into here, right? These boys, well, it is just beautiful, I think. Okay. Genesis 48:7. Now, as for me, when I came, this is Jacob speaking. Now, as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died, to my sorrow, in the land of Canaan on the journey, when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath, and I buried her there, on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. He continues, verse 8, when Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, who are these? And Joseph said to his father, they are my sons, whom God has given me here. So he said, bring them to me, please, that I may bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were so dim from age that he could not see. Then Joseph brought them close to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. Israel said to Joseph, I never expected to see your face, and behold, God has let me see your children as well. Then Joseph took them from his knee and bowed with his face to the ground. Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right, and brought them close to him. Okay, I have that gets confusing, so I've mapped it out here, okay? Let's see. Ephraim has his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh has his left hand toward Israel's right hand. They're standing there. I have a picture at the bottom. Verse 14. But Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands, although Manasseh was the firstborn. All right. Remember, Benjamin is Ben-Yamin, son of my right hand. Your right hand is your strength. When Yeshua, Jesus, when he dies and raises from the dead, he goes up and he sits at the right hand of God. The right hand is the predominant hand, right? That gets the blessing. That's the good, all right? And here, Israel, Jacob, is about to bless these two grandsons, and what does he do? He stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands, although Manasseh was the firstborn. So Ephraim the younger is getting the right hand. You see the problem here? Okay. Well, if you don't matter. Joseph sees the problem. Okay. And Joseph tries to correct his dad. Okay. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. In verse 15, let's hear the blessing. Jacob blessed Joseph and said, here comes the blessing that he's about to give. The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and may my name live on in them, and the names of my father Abraham and Isaac, and may they grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. Notice this blessing. There's something hidden here. It says, the God, look at my finger here, the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil. Why didn't he just say, the God who has blessed me? No, he said it 3 times. There's God the Father, before whom my father Abraham and Isaac walked. There's the Holy Spirit, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day. And there's the third, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil. I'm going to put the angel as being the son, Yeshua, because remember, Yeshua came down and wrestled with Jacob earlier in his life, right? That was the angel of the Lord, the messenger of the Lord. This is a pre-incarnate Jesus coming down to earth and wrestling Jacob. A Christophany, they call it, right? An Old Testament appearance of Yeshua. I just think it's interesting that this blessing included a 3-prong part to it, pointing out that complex unity, the triunity of God. Nice, isn't it? Okay. Verse 17. When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on Ephraim's head, it displeased him, and he grasped his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. So, where he's doing that blessing, remember he puts his right hand over on Ephraim and his left hand on Manasseh, and Joseph says, no, Dad, you got it wrong. First of all, how could you even? I mean, Jacob knows all about mixing up blessings. If you remember, right, Jacob is the one who he bought the birthright from Esau, and then he went in and covered his arm with goat hair into his father Isaac and tricked Isaac into giving him, the younger Jacob, the blessing that Esau was supposed to get. So Jacob knows all about blessings and mixed up blessings and giving the wrong one to the wrong one. Joseph doesn't need to be coaching his dad on giving the blessing, right? Not so, Father. This is the firstborn. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also will become a people, and he will also be great. However, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. He blessed them that day, saying, by you Israel will pronounce blessing, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. Then he put Ephraim before Manasseh. You know, I want to point out something here. Whenever he brings these 2 boys in, and he's giving this blessing, and he puts this hand over on that one, and he puts this hand over on that one, and he tells them, you 2 boys are mine. Remember, he adopted them. They became part of Israel. and got a blessing. And you know what you see when that happens? Look here. You see his arms are crossed. There's the cross. And remember, Ephraim and Manasseh are not Jews. They are sons of Joseph. And who's Joseph married to? Potiphera, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, the high priest of On, an Egyptian. She is Egyptian. She is not Jewish, which means her two boys, Ephraim and Manasseh, are not Jewish. They are Gentiles. Yet they become full-fledged sons of Jacob. How? Through the cross. I am a Gentile, and maybe many of you are Gentiles watching this, but you are going to become part of Israel through the cross. You see that beautiful, beautiful prophetic picture here. It talks about it in Romans, how we, the Gentiles, we are grafted into Israel. We are the wild olive branch. Israel is the olive tree. And it has natural olive branches. Those are the Jews. And then over here, you have the wild olive tree and the wild olive branches, me and other Gentiles. Yet we can become part of Israel. How? We are grafted in because of Yeshua's finished work on the cross. It's the cross that brings us in, just like he crossed his arms and brings in those two boys, Ephraim and Manasseh. How beautiful is that? I think I'll have a drink to that. Wonderful, wonderful picture. Okay? And then in Genesis 25, remember Jacob and Esau, right? And Jacob makes the stew, and Esau came and said, hey, Esau said to Jacob, please, let me have a swallow of that red stuff there, for I am famished. Therefore his name was called Edom, red. And Jacob said, first sell me your birthright. Okay? Esau said, listen, behold, I'm about to die, so what use is a birthright to me? And Jacob said, first swear to me. So Esau swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Here's another example. Remember, Jacob preempted. Jacob's the second born. Esau is the first, and Jacob became the preeminent, right? Right here. Esau gave away, sold his birthright. By the way, this is a nice picture. Esau comes and says, hey, give me some of that red stuff. I'm about to die. He wants a bite of stew. Okay? And look what it says. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew. Wait, he gave him bread and lentil stew. Bread wasn't in the deal. That was very nice of Jacob to, here's the stew. Oh, and have some bread. And he ate and drank. Oh, he drank? Oh, yes. You understand? He's throwing some stuff in extra. That wasn't part of the deal. Jacob was not screwing his brother here. He gave him and gave him some extra. You know, it's kind of like the baker's dozen. You go to a Jew and say, yes, give me a dozen of those, and they throw in 13. That's the picture, right? You're not going to come back and complain we got a bad deal. I gave you what we agreed on. I even gave you a little bit extra. I like that. I think that's a Jewish concept, right? Make the customer happy. But anyway, this birthright that he's getting, it includes some things. Jacob gets the birthright. Remember, part of the birthright, you get a double portion because you are the firstborn. But if you sell that birthright, then that double portion now goes to the next, whoever it's going to. So Reuben didn't get the double portion. Joseph gets the double portion, and then it went to his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay? Part of the birthright also is the priesthood's going to come through that line. The kingship is going to come through that line. The birthright brought a lot of things along with it, okay? So whenever Reuben loses the birthright for sleeping with his dad's concubine or wife, not wife, but maid, handmaid or whatever, and Jacob gets the birthright over Esau, and from Jacob, his boys are going to be splitting up that birthright, not of Esau's sons. So when Jacob gets the birthright from Esau, the double portion part of it goes to Ephraim and Manasseh, the sons of Joseph, right? The Levitical priesthood goes through Levi, a son of Jacob. The kingship is going to go through Judah. Judah, Tamar, it goes all the way through to David, David to Yeshua. There's the kingship. You see how important it was when Jacob got that birthright from Esau, it carried a lot of things with it. And they all came through Jacob. Kingship through Judah, a son of Jacob. The priesthood through Levi, a son of Jacob. The double portion came through Joseph, a son of Jacob. Not the first son, Reuben, but the firstborn of his second wife, Rachel. So that birthright purchase that happened between Esau and Jacob, that's huge because all these things came out from it. You see that? Okay. What else? And 1 Chronicles 5:2 explains why Reuben didn't get it. It says, "Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but because he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel, so that he is not enrolled in the genealogy according to the birthright." See it? This is why Joseph's son, Ephraim and Manasseh, who are fully adopted by Jacob, they each get a portion. There's the double portion, because Joseph's dead. Joseph's going to die at the end of Genesis, and these two boys then get each a piece, right? Okay. What else we got here? Genesis 49. This is the end here where Jacob is blessing everybody, and we already said he told Reuben, "You're not getting you're uncontrollable as water," and whatever he said to him. But for Judah, verse 8, it says, "Yehudah, your brothers shall praise you." This is the blessing Jacob's giving all the boys. "Judah, your brothers shall praise you." Remember, Judah means praise. "Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down to you." Judah is a lion's whelp. "From the prey, my son, you have gone up." He couches, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion who dares rouse him up. Verse 10, "The scepter shall not depart from Yehudah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people." That verse 10, that's huge. The scepter, here's the scepter, right? You're in control if you're holding the scepter. "The scepter shall not depart from Judah." This means the kingship is going to go through the line of Judah. Jesus, Yeshua, he is from the line of Judah. We talked about it with Judah and Tamar, and they had the two twins, Perez, and then they go on down through and you get to Boaz, and Boaz has Obed and Jesse and David, you keep going down and you come to Yeshua. The scepter, the kingship, is going through the line of Judah. And it says that this kingship will not depart from Judah, but that means it's going to depart at some point. "It shall not depart from Judah until Shiloh comes. That means at some point when Shiloh comes, the scepter will depart from Judah. Do you see that? Okay. Well, when did Shiloh, who is Shiloh? Shiloh, it comes from like the word peace, and it represents the Messiah. So it says, the scepter will not depart Judah, so one of Judah's descendants will always be king in Israel until the Messiah comes. Then it's going to depart. Well, guess what? When Jesus shows up, when Yeshua, the Messiah, shows up, were the Jews in control? Did they have a king on the throne then? N-O spells no. Why? Remember, they did not have authority to kill Jesus. The Romans were in charge. You see, the scepter had departed from Judah. They didn't have the authority to kill. They had to get the Romans' permission to do that. So this prophetic picture in verse 49:10 of Genesis, it's saying there will be a king on the throne in Israel, and that king will come from the line of Judah until Messiah comes. This is it's almost proving itself that Shiloh must have come because the scepter had departed. They no longer had the authority to capital punishment somebody. You see that? That's huge and pretty also that it works. Okay. Okay, we're going to wind this up now. Genesis 50, verse 22. Now Joseph stayed in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw the third generation of Ephraim's sons. Also the sons of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were born on Joseph's knees. Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will surely take care of you and bring you up from this land to the land which he promised on oath to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely take care of you, and you shall carry my bones up from here. So Joseph died at the age of 110, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. There's a lot happening there, okay? Joseph living 110 years old, he's about to die. He wants them to promise that you will take my bones back there and bury me when I do die, okay? No problem there. And then Joseph does die, and he's embalmed, and he's placed in a coffin in Egypt. This word for coffin, by the way, is aron. There it is, aron. We see that word elsewhere in the Bible. In Exodus 25:10, whenever he instructs them to build an ark, the Ark of the Covenant, they shall construct an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide and 1.5 cubits high. This is the ark. The ark is where they put the tablets. The 10 Commandments went into the ark. A bowl of manna went into the ark. Aaron's rod, which budded, went into the ark. These 3 items went into the Ark of the Covenant. They had to carry it. It was all covered with gold. They was in the temple. This is where the high priest would go behind the priest and behind the veil and pour the blood on the mercy seat on top of the Ark of the Covenant. That Ark of the Covenant, that is the same word, aron. It's the same word as coffin that Joseph is put in. It has nothing to do with Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark was a tabah, okay? That's a different word completely. This word aron is 2 meanings. It's this coffin, and it's the box, the Ark of the Covenant, okay? That's interesting that they use this word for coffin and for ark, okay? I also think it's interesting the way Genesis 50:26 ends. It says, Joseph died at 110, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. What? That's the last verse of Genesis. Isn't that amazing? I mean, remember how Genesis began? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It starts out with a bang, and it ends up in a coffin in Egypt. How did this go from this to a coffin in Egypt? I think that's kind of almost the state of mankind. We were created in chapter 1 of Genesis. Man is created, and Genesis ends up ending in a coffin in Egypt. Yet, God has a plan to bring us back, right? Which involves also the Aron, the coffin, the Ark of the Covenant. It's going to be part of it, of his solution, right? Yeshua, the Word, the manna. Anyway, God bless you for watching. May God get the glory and the honor and the praise for putting all this beautiful stuff together. I really enjoyed this Joseph talk. I hope you did as well. And I guess we'll see you soon. God bless. Amen. Bye.